Hey, welcome back to the BVB podcast. My name's Jacob, joined as always by Carver. How's it going, man? How are you doing?
Doing well. Ready for this episode. How are you?
Doing pretty good. I don't know where to start except this is kind of the end of the year review. Thanks to everyone who filled out the survey that we put out that Carver painstakingly put together. Hopefully, it didn't take you too long. I don't know. No, cool. And it didn't take too long to fill out. So if you didn't do it, that's on you because it took like maybe 5 minutes, if that. And despite me not filling it out last year, I've learned from my mistakes, and I'm prepared for this episode because I actually filled it out this time. But yeah, big thank you to everyone on our socials and our Discord who got connected and filled out that survey. But yeah, we're going to go through it. You want to jump right in? I don't know if you have anything else, Carver, but I think we can just get into it.
Yeah, it's just all the more fun whenever we get to see everyone's opinions on here. It's if you are not up to date, we sent out a survey about a week and a half ago, just recapping the 23-24 season for Borussia Dortmund. Some of these are fill in the blank questions. Some are a sliding scale, just to get some general thoughts about what people thought about the season. And there are some good answers in here. There's some answers that I expected. There are some other ones that I did not expect. There are some funny ones in here for the fill in the blank. So yeah, just happy to get into it.
Spoiler alert on the fill in the blank, the one that said, "What do you want from the podcast?" and the one that said "more Carver," that was me. So
okay, I didn't know that until you
just clear the air immediately. That one was me.
Got it.
But if other people said that, then we'll always need more Carver.
Right.
Never shy away from more Carver. So
yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready to start if you are.
Yeah, let's do it. So, first question we have on the survey was, how would you rate Borussia Dortmund's 2023 and 24 overall campaign? So this was between 1 and 10, 1 being poor, 10 being perfect. It ranged from 4 to 8, really, from their responses, but about 47%, most of the people put at a 7. Including myself. I don't know about you, Jake. Do you have like a differing number for that, or?
Nope. I also put a 7. I'm really interested in the 4s, or maybe it was just one person who had a 4. But that is crazy. I mean, yeah. You want to talk Bundesliga campaign? Absolutely. I think that's what brought mine down to a 7. But yeah, 4 is wild.
It is, and I made sure to put overall, so it's all the competitions here. And for as much as I critique Terzic on the show pretty consistently, I think a 4 is pretty harsh. I don't know if people were just kind of trolling or they sincerely think that it was just that poor of a season. Domestically, a 4. I mean, I could kind of see that, but yeah, I mean,
maybe a 5 for 5th.
Right. Yeah. Right. The Champions League run balanced it out a good amount for me. I don't think it was really any higher than a 7, just because we didn't make top 4. All the other teams above us in the Bundesliga table were consistently better than us. If they were not, beating us, they were drawing us most of the time. Whenever we had chances to go up, from the likes of like Leverkusen, both times we played them, they were beatable, and we were just unable to get a result. Of course, at home too, we just barely let them score in the 97th for them to keep their undefeated streak in the Bundesliga alive. We did have a win in Munich, first time since just against Munich in general, since the 18-19 season. So that's, something to remember, and a little consolation, I guess, you could take away from this season against one of the, biggest, if not the best team in the Bundesliga historically. But yeah, overall campaign, obviously very, very memorable in the Champions League, but very forgettable domestically. So I put a 7, and that's where a lot of the other people ended up lying as well. Moving on to question 2, how would you rate Edin Terzic's 23-24 campaign as manager? This one's all over the place, the results. I don't know if you took a look here at some of the responses behind the form, but we have, again, another sliding scale between 1 and 10. Every single option except 10 has a response. So people put 1, 2, all the way up to 9. Although there is a tie here for the responses between a 5 and a 6. And just behind 5 and 6, we have 21% of people voting 7 as well. So probably around the middle of the road here between 5 and 7 is where most people landed on for rating Edin Terzic's campaign. Again, I don't necessarily disagree. I forget exactly where I put my vote. I think it might have been either a 6 or a 7. But yeah, I mean, I mentioned plenty of times before. If there's a game that's just one game ahead of Terzic, he can usually shine as manager and have a game plan in mind that he can have it execute well from the likes of pick any opposition in the Champions League. But whenever you have these season long campaigns and just Bundesliga games week in and week out, that's whenever he starts to really kind of fall back, and you see these really, really underwhelming performances against any number of opposition in the Bundesliga. I mean, these are bottom 6 teams that we continuously struggle against. We're not picking up as many points as we should, and that's where we usually fall short when it comes to the table at the end of each season. But yeah, like I said, split between 5 and 6, and then 7 just below that. Jake, you have any thoughts on that one?
I gave him a 7, which is probably a bit high. I think he gets so much grace for the Champions League run. I mean, we've talked about this countless times, right? Like during the winter break, he was probably sitting at a 3, if not lower for me. Like we're pretty much in agreement that he should be gone, and we wanted to bring in a new coach at that point in the season. And that's with I think at that point we had won the group stage or top of the group in the Champions League already. But yeah, I mean, it goes back to the first question too. Like I voted 7 on both, and I think because it is just so similar. Because when you look at the Bundesliga campaign, like that seems like such a failure. The fact that we're out of top 4, yes, still Champions League because of that extra 5th spot. But yeah, that the Bundesliga campaign was definitely a failure, which is why like I think it's very valid to maybe give him a 4 or 5, because I mean that is what we play in, right? Like that's I mean, the Champions League is the big one, but the Bundesliga is it's the regular season, and you have to be able to perform in that if you want to consistently be in the Champions League. And historically, we are obviously a club that does that, and those are just our expectations. Those are the simple expectations, and you kind of missed out on that, which was, I mean, yeah, I could very easily see lower than a 7. Like I said, give him some grace for the Champions League. I think you when you look at these performances and the good performances, right, all the Champions League ones, you can throw in the Bayern win in that category too, right? Like it falls into that category of these Champions League fixtures and matchups, which is now, of course, we get a result when he figured out how to win those games and get through on those games. So it kind of like checks out that he also did it against Bayern this year. Still like an amazing feat in our Bundesliga campaign. I'm glad we made it happen. But looking at the overall picture, it's like, yeah, you kind of put that in that kind of Champions League category.
Right. And I'm hoping we can point some of that same energy towards the likes of Leipzig going forward. We, of course, like you mentioned, we had a great result in Munich this season, but Terzic has been consistently outcoached tactically against the likes of Marco Rosa for several years now. There's been, a handful of games in a row where Leipzig have completely just steamrolled us, if not, I mean, even at home too, right? So there's definitely so much more that Terzic has to learn as a manager, again, especially domestically, and not just teams that are above us in the table either, right? I mean, there's been a handful of oppositions this season that also just made us stumble. Like I said, bottom 6 teams, really anywhere in the table. Heidenheim comes to mind too.
Mainz, there's been towards the end.
Mainz, yeah, of course. I mean, even relegation candidates too. That sometimes where it takes a while for us, if at all, to ever get going in those matches. So, yeah, between 5 and 7, that's probably where I would rate as well. And now we're going into the accolades. We have a few here. First one was biggest disappointment. I'm pretty sure everyone knows where this is going here. It's going to be Felix Metsche for the biggest disappointment this season. Although, and including myself, I did put him. But after I submitted it, I was thinking to myself, like, doesn't disappointment, I guess, mean that you had expectations and then they just fell short? And I didn't have any expectations for Metsche. So I guess if I could retract my vote, although it wouldn't matter whatsoever because it was overwhelming for everyone to select Metsche here. The next person in line besides Metsche was between Benzebaini and Niklas Zula with 4 votes each, and all the rest, I mean, over 56% of the votes went towards Metsche. So, and it's no surprise there. I would say there is definitely some arguments for Niklas Zula. I mean, he's been here for about 2 seasons now, 2.5 seasons, and he is completely unable to get into this side consistently. I get the center back partnership is very hard to break into because you have just two incredible center backs in Schlotterbeck and Hummels, but either way, Sula has still been pretty underwhelming for the most part. He's had moments, of course, and on both sides of the ball, but consistently he has been pretty underwhelming. So yeah, other than Mecha, you could definitely put in Zula in the mix, and Benzabaini, of course, he had a unlucky string of injuries, but also just unable to even touch the likes of Matson, and he's been pretty forgettable. I mean, a lot of people seem to forget that he's even on this team at the moment. So, yeah, pretty expected here with the results for that one. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I had Mecha in mind. I was very close to putting Benzabaini because, like you mentioned, the expectations. Although I did have not, it's expectations isn't the right word, but I was I guess anticipating to be proven wrong by Mecha. Not that I expected him to prove me wrong, but I was looking for that because I needed to see the reason, like a reasoning behind signing him besides that's just who Terzic wanted. You know what I mean? Like I wanted validation for like we spent this money.
Mm-hmm.
At least we need some kind of player out of him, which that was also a disappointment. But very early on, I know throughout the whole season, hypercritical, but like I was laser focused on him every minute he played just to see if he did anything. And there was not a lot that I liked. And so, yeah, but it's like my expectations were low anyways. I was just hyper analyzing to see something. But yeah, I mean, he's number one for me. Benzabaini, like I said, good shout. I almost put him just because I did have more expectations or higher expectations for him coming into the season. And then it was just pretty abysmal. And thank God they got Matson to come in, or I don't know where we would be. Sula is an interesting one too. And we had a great center back partnership, and like you can't, if you have a good partnership going, it is hard to break into that because it's a partnership for a reason, right? And so I wonder if Zula, if it's a little more that he just didn't quite get a chance, because I don't, and I could be wrong, I could just be misremembering. I don't remember him coming in and doing anything too terribly. I remember some really good moments from him. I know I think stylistically, I mean, people are very critical of him anyways, just because like his size and how big he is. But he can still move. He can be pretty quick. And like that, the goal line save, the Mbappe
Right.
goal in the Champions League is the obvious standout to me. And I think there's still more we could see from him. Like I fully get when people say we should move him on or he's just not cut out for the club. Like I understand that, but I think more of this is the Mats Hummels aspect of him just being incredible this year, especially to kind of just push Sula aside and not really give him a chance to break in.
Yeah, and he scored a goal as well against Leipzig earlier in the season. But I mean, his positioning is just, that's where I would argue his biggest criticisms are. I mean, Schlotterbeck has improved a lot in that area, but yeah, like Sula, he's got the pace, of course, but he's usually often caught out. He just doesn't seem necessarily that focused at times. It's nothing like, again, too detrimental and too obvious that you're seeing all the time, but it's just not up to the standard that I think that we should be setting. And just given, again, the stature of who he is and where he's been in his career, you would expect him to be a little bit more fine-tuned and just ready to contribute more. But yeah, I mean, he hasn't had much of a chance at times either. So I could see how, it could go either way going forward. And with Mecha, I'm not really sure. I think I'm imagining the board and management is just going to be stubborn and trying to double and triple down on him to try to make something out of him. It was obviously a massive signing in terms of the financials that we forked over to get his signature. And yet he is just not producing much at all. His execution, he looks slow at times. I've talked about him plenty enough on this show, so I'll try to not say too much more. But just, yeah, I don't know exactly where we go forward with Mecha. But next one here, we have most valuable player, MVP. This one I found was interesting because two things. One, a lot of people put two names instead of just one. So I guess people thought like there would be two MVPs. And then as well as, well, I'll just say the two names were Hummels and Kobel. And then the other thing was just Hummels was in the lead for a long time as I was watching these results over the past week. But slowly but surely, Kobel started to climb more and more higher. And surely enough, by today, whenever the survey closed, Kobel ended up being the most voted for MVP with 34% of the votes. Just behind him, Hummels with 31%. And I don't think there's necessarily really a wrong answer here. Hummels, I mean, plenty of times in the Champions League single-handedly carried this team, and you could say the exact same thing about Kobel. Kobel did miss a handful of games this year, as you know, it's kind of becoming a consistent trend where he gets a really unfortunate knock and he's out for a while, and then you have to rely on Meyer, who's been pretty reliable as well. But I mean, Kobel is just, I don't think we need to say too much more about him other than him being easily top 3, I would argue, best keeper in the world, if not the best keeper in the world at the moment. So yeah, MVP for Kobel. I don't really have any disagreements there.
Yeah, I voted Kobel, and I did take the survey late today, so maybe I'm the one who set it over the top and got that last minute vote in. Yeah, he's just incredible. I was close to doing Hummels. I know there's, because it's Champions League run, obviously, and maybe that's the basis. Maybe that's what you want to vote on, is his performances in the Champions League. He's also had some forgettable performances too. But then Kobel, I was hesitant also just because I feel like he did miss quite a few games this year. I don't know the exact number, but I felt his absence a lot. But there's just so many moments in so many games where he comes up with these huge saves that are game-winning saves or point-saving saves, or I don't know. He's just awesome. I also feel like we forget to give him so much credit that I was really wanted to be like, this is my opportunity to make sure I give Kobel all the love he needs by voting for him MVP, because we would be in a very different spot without him, because defenses already break through and or not defense teams, attacking teams already break through our defense enough.
Oh yeah.
So you need this solid goalkeeper back there to stop those shots. And that's what he does time and time again.
He missed 7 games this season. It's almost 2 months of football that he was absent for. But in the 27 games domestically that he was in, I mean, he made 85 saves, 121 shots faced. Conceded 34 goals. But when you just see how consistently, again, like you mentioned, so many teams are able to break through, have the shots on goal that very, very few keepers in the world would even have a lick of a chance at. And Kobel is just consistently dancing on his head. And just like Hummels, those two just basically single-handedly carrying this team. So yeah, shout out to Kobel. I'm so glad that we have such an amazing keeper at our disposal for, years to come. I'm hoping Kobel can be another legend and just solidify himself here as such an even bigger figure than he already is. And you can see the love he has for the club, and just really excited for him going forward. So yeah, MVP is going to go to Kobel with a very close second of Mats Hummels. And we have most improved, which again, we have a few people who are pretty close when it comes to the votes here, but we have Julian Ryerson as the most improved with the most votes. We have, and just below him, we have Schlotterbeck, and then just below him, we have Sabitzer. So 3 really good shouts. I don't have an argument for any of them. I think all 3 have consistently improved in their own ways. Ryerson, and he's got another accolade here that I'll mention afterward, but I mean, he's such a workhorse, and so many fans love him so much, even though he is like someone who usually flies under the radar. He's just someone who consistently performs against any opposition. He's played the likes of against Mbappe this season, Vinicius, so many other top quality attackers in European football, in the most prestige competitions in European football, and he just never falls short. And when he's on the ball, he's a lot better than people may think. I said since day one, whenever he was here, I mean, he scored on his debut for Dortmund. He is a lot better on the ball than people can, give him credit for. I mean, he's scored a handful of goals. One of them was this, the goal that he had by himself where he ran, 60, 70 yards against Hoffenheim earlier in the season. I mean, the man is a machine. So Julian Ryerson with the most improved accolade. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel like when I was filling out most improved, I kind of overlooked Ryerson, and I think I'm not trying to say like, oh, I was so high on him. Like I was a huge fan when he came in and started proving himself. Like we even talked about, like he came on real hot, and we're like, okay, hopefully he can maintain this, and I think he kind of has. I think the difference between this year and last year, I think we saw those same skill sets. Maybe he scored a bit more this year. He was also here for the full year. I think he had more opportunities to shine this year playing in the Champions League. And that's where you kind of see this improvement. Like I totally get it, and he probably has, I think, overall gotten better with just the level of competition he's playing at. I think he's someone who can always rise to the occasion. So I think you can probably look at statistics and probably pinpoint that, yeah, he's statistically gotten better or whatever. But like, I don't know, he wasn't even on my radar for this because I didn't think he was bad or disappointing or anything last year. Like I loved him last year too. Like I fully expected him to be our right back this year. And what I love too is like you see, I mean, it's a negative thing, but it's like when he's not playing right back because we need to rotate, he goes and then plays left back and can do that in it, do that very well too. But I love how versatile he is. We can use him on both sides. Not that I want to all the time, but I think from the left is where he got that 70-yard run goal,
Right.
just bolting down the left. It's a really good shout, and I have no problem with it. That's not who I voted for. Before I get to it, I will shout out Schlotterbeck too. That's a very good shout because I know he had a lot of criticism last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's been very solid this year. So that's a really good shout. Kind of overlooked him too. I actually voted for. Do you have anything to say on those two before I give mine?
I was just say for Schlotterbeck, I mean, I think he's limited a lot of those mistakes that we did see last year, particularly against the ball. But he's improved on both aspects. I mean, you look at his pass accuracy here, he's got 90% pass accuracy. Long ball accuracy is 60%, which is in the 90th percentile for center backs. I mean, if you take even just away all the data and you just look at his performances this year, how many times has he single-handedly played in an unbelievable ball in behind him and Hummels both, to set up the likes of Fulkrug, whoever, with just these gorgeous passes, perfectly weighted. And then you look at Schlotterbeck created 16 chances as well as a center back. He had a few runs going forward where at times like, man, is this dude playing left wing or at a 10 too? For someone who plays a center back, he's got so much tools in his arsenal that most people wouldn't expect from a center back. Just his ability on the ball. It just comes to his dribbling, his passing. He's got an amazing pace too for as a center back. So all arounded, a very solid player, and he has definitely improved a lot this season. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll probably, now that we've gone through this, I'll probably say Schlotterbeck is probably who I should have voted for or who I should have put in there. I think he is the right answer. My vote, and maybe you can tell me if anyone else had this, because maybe not, and I think it's taken from a very small sample size, but I put Jamie bynoe-gittens in there. Just because I feel like we saw a really good step up from him. Like last year, he was the young guy who would come on occasionally, and sometimes he would do something. Sometimes he was just kind of getting minutes. He did have some really good impact moments last year, like came on and got some goals. But this year, we saw him get a run of starts when I think Mullen was out. Adeyemi wasn't quite on form, and he was started quite a few games, I think, earlier on in the season. And one of our most consistent wingers. I think that fell off a little bit, but I think you see that with younger players. But it just felt like he became a proper first team footballer. Not that he was playing with the under 23s last year, but I saw a lot more consistency, and there were a lot more times where I wanted him to come in because I felt like we needed what he could bring, and I just think he stepped up a lot this season and came in my eyes like proper first team footballer, ready to go.
Yeah. That first half of the season, I would agree. I think he was, and I said on the show, he was consistently our best winger for that whole first half of the season. A lot of people like Mullen really came to life here in the spring, but in the fall, when we were somehow even more atrocious than we were domestically this spring, bynoe-gittens really was the spark that we needed out here on the wings, creating for other people. I mean, in the Champions League too, not just domestically, taking players on. I mean, you guys know how well of a player he is and just what kind of profile he is as well. But yeah, I definitely agree with that. And then lastly
seemed like a lot more maturity in his game, I think, this year.
Yeah. And then the last thing here for Sabitzer, a lot of votes here for most improved as well. I mean, the second half of the season, just like a lot of other players, Sabitzer really stepped up, both domestically and internationally, having like a slightly different role. The midfield starting to take its shape a bit finally after a few months, and Sabitzer really came to life, contributing a lot on both sides of the ball. I've been saying that a lot, but I mean, it rings definitely true for Sabitzer as well. And he obviously scored a great goal against Atletico Madrid to keep our dreams alive there of reaching the Champions League final. Sabitzer really did a good job of justifying the price tag that he came with for, a 30-year-old center midfielder, and whenever we signed him last summer. So good shout for his name as well. Next one here is most underappreciated player, which I kind of already alluded to already, but this was overwhelmingly Julian Ryerson with 57% of the votes. I mean, yeah, like I said already, he flies under the radar, but he has been so consistently rock solid. He surprises, I think, a lot of people whenever he is on the ball. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but yeah, have 57% of the votes for Ryerson, just not even just below him, but the next person in line was Sabitzer with 16% of the votes. I don't have any disagreements there. I think it's absolutely Julian Ryerson.
Yeah, maybe I forgot about him when I was just going through this stuff, which is bad. Or it's because I just love him so much already. I don't think of him in that sense. I probably a lot of people might disagree with me in this sense, but my vote was for Brandt. And maybe in the Dortmund fan base, it's not true. I think people appreciate him a lot, but I feel like he went a little bit under the radar, and maybe that's on the European scale or the global scale, and maybe it's here in the Champions League pundits, for instance. I don't know. I feel like he didn't get enough appreciation in that sense. Appreciation Brant boys till we die, right?
Day one
earlier in the season was I don't have a name on one of my kits yet, so I'm gonna put Brant on it because I love him so much. I just feel like maybe there's a little underappreciatedness outside of the Dortmund fan community or outside of the Bundesliga. He could use some more love. So
yeah,
and I think 12 assists, 7 goals. He was just kind of solid throughout the whole season and maybe a bit more consistent, and that's why people didn't vote for him. But
yeah, I was gonna excuse me. I was gonna say I know this falls more under most improved rather than most appreciated, but I mean, Brent has completely turned his game around the past 2 years at Dortmund. I mean, he's had the most goal contributions at Dortmund since his arrival in 2019 with 24 goal contributions this season in 47 games, 10 goals, 14 assists. I mean, compare that to whenever he was in his 2021 season when, at least from what I was seeing, a lot of people wanted him kind of out the door when he was just not performing under Favre, whenever Terzic first arrived too. And under Rosa too, but he has completely changed his game. So yeah, good shout there for underappreciated as well. Now we have Defender of the Year, and I know we talked a lot about Ryerson, but this was overwhelmingly Mats Hummels. 77% of the votes here for Defender of the Year. Schlotterbeck was behind him with only 13% of the votes. So this was overwhelming for Mats Hummels. I don't think there's I guess you could argue that Schlotterbeck, is also, up there for Defender of the Year, but Hummels has just been on a whole nother level.
Yeah, I voted Hummels. It's also where I think I felt better voting MVP for Kobel because this is the moment in the where Hummels can kind of take a crown, right? Yeah, he's just the performances. You just go the performances he gave in the Champions League, multiple man of the match performances, kind of dragging this team along. Yeah, and I think that's all you need because in a voting sense like this, that's where you really hang our hat on the season, and he's the man who gave us that platform. I feel so. Gets my vote.
Yeah, 4 goals this season. I mean, how many vintage performances, like you said, in the Champions League, where he shut down some of the biggest European giants in the world. I mentioned his goals already. So many shots, passes that led to shots as well. Similar to Schlotterbeck with these balls in behind. Also 90% pass accuracy, 68% of long ball accuracy, 9 chances created, 1,700 touches, which is in the 71% of center backs in Europe. So, yeah, I mean, Mats Hummels absolutely crushed it this year. It looks like, according to reports as the last few days, that Hummels will be out the door. These are just recording the reports that he would only likely stay if Edin Terzic is no longer coach. And, just given that Terzic has achieved the Champions League final, that looks very, very unlikely. So Hummels will be likely to leave Borussia Dortmund, unfortunately. I'm hoping that we'll have a good farewell for him as well. I know we're now in the middle of the summer, so it won't be like a Sid Tribuna kind of tifo or anything like that, but the man absolutely deserves some recognition just given how long he's spent at the club. I know he's been back and forth with Munich his whole career, even in his youth career, but he has spent well over a decade at this club. And, he arrived in the 1920 season with a $35 million price tag. A lot of people, including myself, didn't know if that was going to be worth it. I mean, he was turning like 31 at the time, I think just turning 31. A lot of people think, he's obviously not going to have the pace. Is he going to be kind of mentally switched off? Is he past his prime? And these last 2 years, he has absolutely shown that is not the case. I mean, of course, he's lost a lot of his pace, but he arguably was at his prime at 34 and 35 years old, just given how incredible of a defender he has been against any kind of a player that he's gone up against as well, right? I mean, from the likes of Mbappe, again, Vinicius, just similar players that I mentioned against Ryerson as well. So, yeah, definitely agree for Defender of the Year, Mats Hummels. Congratulations to him. I know all these players are listening and they're really thankful for all these accolades that we had in the survey. So, Midfielder of the Year.
Yeah, we're sending out little trophies or medals, right?
Right, exactly. Midfielder of the Year. This one was for Julian Brandt with 61% of the votes. Behind him was Marcel Sabitzer with just 34% of the votes. Talked a bit about them both already. Do you have any thoughts on Brandt?
Yeah, I guess this is where he gets his love, right? When I said he was underappreciated. I think if Sabitzer would have had to come in and had the full season, how he kind of ended things, he might have taken it. But besides that, though, like Brandt was pretty consistent throughout the season, and just always there and always there to contribute to a goal when we needed it. And I just don't think he had much competition. Like, I mean, Emre Can, kind of here and there, and against Sabitzer was kind of a late unveiling with him to really start contributing.
Emre Can didn't get a single vote, so I don't even think so. Jadon Sancho got a few.
I think
Go ahead.
The sad thing with this vote, I was going to say Royce, is like we just didn't see Royce enough for him to have a real impact. Sadly,
I know. Shout out to the one person that did vote Royce, though. He did get one, so it was just out of those 4 players. I mean, like I said, Sancho got 2. Sabitzer was number 2 in this instance with, again, 34%. But yeah, Brandt is just what makes this midfield tick. And the midfield has been really, really lackluster. I think that comes down almost exclusively to coaching this year and just the lack of reinforcements that we've been able to bring in that could make an impact. I mean, we did invest into the midfield, but it was the wrong kind of investments. So Brandt really had to pick up a lot of that weight, especially in the first half of the season when Sabitzer was still trying to find his footing in this system and make things happen. That's exactly what Brandt did. I mean, he had 80 chances created this season, 49 successful crosses, obviously very good pass accuracy with 87%, 27 successful dribbles, which is in the 79 percentile of midfielders. He had 14 tackles won as well. So again, I mentioned that he improved a lot of the different aspects of his game that people didn't see a few years ago, and tackling is one of them, and just having a better work rate defensively. So yeah, definitely Julian Brandt boys for life with the midfielder of the year. Now, last accolade of the season, which is attacker of the year, we have Nicholas Füllkrug, 63% of the votes. This kind of fluctuated back and forth when I was watching the results between him and number 2, Daniel Malen. Daniel Malen was kind of closer, and then it started to be taken away by Füllkrug over the past few days. But Malen had 32% of the votes here. But yeah, I mean, Füllkrug, we needed the pure number 9. Haller, unfortunately, just had a lot of things going on with him in his personal life and physically, I would imagine mentally as well. So he was not able to be up to the standard that we needed. I mean, whether that was any factor, driving factor for him to, not be able to be in this team. But Füllkrug did definitely have a lot of stinkers this season, but he did also, show up in big moments as well. I mean, domestically, internationally, he made our hold-up play a lot better at times too. Do you have any thoughts on him?
Yeah, I voted for Füllkrug. I was interested to see how this voting was going to go because I feel like he got a lot of hate too. People felt like he wasn't doing quite enough. And
right.
this whole, I mean, our attacking, I think that's I mean, maybe there are other weak points, midfield being one of them, but like this was kind of an interesting one to vote for. Malen, obviously the top goal scorer in the Bundesliga, but also got a lot of heat this season, and he was out for quite a bit too. Um, but yeah, just interesting to see. Like, I don't think Malen got a lot of love this year, and a lot of people were ready to just see him go. And maybe part of that was there were the reports of he seemed like he wanted to go, and his attitude, he didn't have the right attitude, and all this. But then you still see him. I mean, you can still score when you don't not happy to be there, but he was still pulling up numbers, and getting goals. But yeah, I mean, I voted Füllkrug. Like you said, he did step up and have some really good moments, and he felt a little more consistent to me than maybe what appeared in the numbers or what other people saw. Like, I just felt like he was kind of always there and was able to get a goal when we needed it. Yeah, and I voted for him. So
I mean, he was more consistent throughout the whole season compared to really any other attacker here. We had a few votes for Adeyemi. Adeyemi continues to be very, very sporadic. Mukoko didn't get any sort of a chance to have any sort of shout. JBG was the most consistent winger, but just throughout the whole season, I mean, he doesn't compare in just in terms of numbers and contributions, and also just being, again, that focal point in attack that this team really, really needed. And also, again, I mean, Füllkrug too, he set up a lot of other teammates as well. He's a very unselfish player. You could argue almost to a fault at times, but he did have 8 assists in the Bundesliga campaign exclusively, and also a handful of assists in the Champions League as well. So, he's always willing and able to help out other teammates as well. And he just continues to be on a slow trajectory his whole career, even at 31 years old, which is pretty cool to see. I mean, he's didn't play in the Champions League before this season, and he definitely delivered on a lot of occasions. So shout out to Füllkrug for the attacker of the year. A few more questions here in the survey. This one was, what was your favorite game of the season? So we had a fill in the blank here. A lot of different results, but I'll go over the few ones that were consistently mentioned. Of course, you have the 4-2 win over Atletico Madrid. That was one of my responses as well. I mean, there was just what a roller coaster of emotions that was. And at the time, I was biting my nails, and I didn't think I was going to be my favorite game. But I don't know. I mean, the memories created from that game was very awesome. The Sabitzer goal was epic. I can't believe the header that Füllkrug got on the end of that one, too. So shout out for that game. Of course, you had the Bayern away game, too. First time beating Munich since the 18-19 season. First time winning in Munich in about a decade, if I remember correctly. What other ones do we have here? Second leg against PSG, getting the clean sheet. Yeah, holding PSG to 2 clean sheets in a row, which is pretty crazy, especially, too, because we played them twice in the group stage, and we were pretty underwhelming in those. But boys really showed up and played brave on that one. As I look through these other ones, did you have any other thoughts about those other games, or do you have a different answer here?
No, I voted for the Atletico game, coming back 4-2. Probably my favorite. Like, PSG was so good too, but I think the Atletico, just the drama in that game, and all the goals was just insane. And then, yeah, Bayern, I mean, those are probably top 3. I also love the game. I don't remember who it was against, but towards the end when we rotated everybody, it was like our second to last home game of the year. And we won 5-1. Maybe it wasn't Darmstadt. It was the match before that.
It was Augsburg, yeah.
Augsburg. It was a great, Marco Reus, that was right after he announced he was leaving. It wasn't his last game, but right after he announced, he had a great game. But I also loved seeing like the Murray start and play, and Papadopoulos. Like, I just loved all of that, kind of the farewell that match was, and it was just fun. Like, oh, we're resting literally everybody for to make sure we're good for the Champions League, and they just came out and had a great time. So that one's up there too, maybe because it's a little closer. I remember it, but
right. No
Atletico is the top one for me though.
And then the other one that was mentioned too a handful of times was the Royce farewell game, just the last game against Darmstadt last home game of the season. Yeah, I think that's also a great shout too. I was just rewatching those highlights while I was also watching the Royce farewell documentary, or whatever you want to call it, that was uploaded to YouTube a few days ago. If anyone hasn't seen that yet, definitely go check that out. It did make me tear up twice. I I would say even probably more than tear up. I was starting to cry a bit just because, I mean, just seeing Royce's face while he goes throughout the memories and everything, it's a really cool video. But yeah, a lot of good shouts here for favorite game of the season. Looking ahead here to next season, we have a few questions. Would you keep Edin Terzic as manager for the start of next season? And this was split 70-30. 70% people saying yes, they would stick with Terzic as manager. 30% saying no. We already talked about Terzic a little bit. Do you have any other thoughts?
I voted yes because I think you have to give him some grace with what happened in the Champions League.
Yep.
And again, we've talked about it before, but with Cheyenne and Bender coming in, and that if it's a true, like what I'm imagining, like this really coaching unit team, this trio that's working together, if that's kind of the difference, then cool. Let's just hope for the best from here. I kind of want to change my vote if it means Matt Hummels is leaving. If that is the reason, I freaking hate it. Like, because I hate that there could be that much like tension and divisiveness. And so maybe if we can keep Matt Hummels, can he just stay on as player coach? Like, is that a shout?
Looks like, yeah, I don't know. Looks like Hummels maybe wants to spend a season or two in Serie A. So,
like, I want to be optimistic, and I want to say, well, obviously, I'm saying like, yeah, you got to give him a chance because what he did in the Champions League. But there's still, I just have so much doubt. Still, for me, it's like a pity he can stay on because he did this thing. But you got to freaking prove it, and I just don't know if he's going to be able to do it.
I don't disagree with that as well. I think he should be on a short leash. And this summer is going to be vital for, this rebuild. This restructuring of the club is a huge, huge ask. We have so many players that are leaving on, just with their contracts going out, losing the likes of Royce. Hummels is likely out the door next. As much as we love Julian Rierson, we don't have a single other right back in this team now that Moret and Wolf are out of their contract. Ben Zabayani's future is up in the air. So it's we also, the future is up in the air for a handful of other players too that are not out of contracts. I mean, I've seen now reports that if the fee is right, we could be letting go of Adeyemi, which that seems unlikely. But of course, Malen too, he could be potentially out the door with just, potential suitors in the Premier League or wherever he wants to go. So the restructuring of this team is going to be huge. This is going to be another very vital summer to pick up the pieces of last year too, which was very underwhelming, very mismanaged, chaotic, just overall shambolic really that last summer. So hopefully this will be a better one, which is a good segue into the third to last question, excuse me. Which positions would you invest in this summer? And you could just check off multiple boxes here for the options. You have just pretty much every player or position on the field except for goalkeeper, because I don't think anyone really would want to vote for investment there. But the most votes here was center back. I guess people just thinking now that Hummels is out the door, we need more reinforcements there. We needed reinforcements there in general for a while now. We've only had 3. I'm not sure how we continued to go through this season with only 3, but just below that, we have 75% of the votes going for defensive midfielder, another number 6, which I think definitely. I mean, Emre Can is at best not cutting it. And whenever he plays simple, he can be fine, I guess. But we really need some other number 6s in this team, not just, holding midfielders that can cover the back line, but also just players that can progress the ball, pick out some passes, help in our buildup. And then votes are kind of all over the place, which just goes to show you how
we need literally everything.
Yeah, which just goes to show you just how much reinvestment that this team needs. I mean, you have below that, you have a left back, you have striker. A few people put in central midfielders as well, right back, even left and right winger as well. So it's kind of all over the place. But yeah, you have the top 3 of center back, defensive midfielder, and striker, and then below that, just below that are fullbacks.
Yeah, I'm surprised fullback's not higher. Like, you look at the numbers as far as you look at the roster, right? And Maatsen was on loan, right? He's technically right now not a Dortmund player unless we bring him back, unless we pay the fee. And so that's investment right there. I think I put fullback at number 1 because he is my top priority. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, like, he should be the first signing. He was my number 1. As you mentioned, Wolf is also out of contract, so he's gone. So he was our backup right back, so now we need that. It's just crazy how depleted we are, and and more people could go too if we if Hummels is up in the air. Mullen, as you mentioned, is kind of up in the air. Towards the end of the season, I kind of see maybe Mullen is staying. Maybe he will stick around. But then you have Jadon Sancho. Like him, I'll put him and Maatsen in the same category as far as like they were solid part of our like they were starting 11. And now they are gone already. Like that's just they're not here anymore. That's the sad truth. So we already need to figure out how to get them back or I don't know. But it's just crazy how much of a rebuild we need. And yeah, defensive midfield was the third one. So I put fullback, center back, and then defensive midfield because yeah, we need an improvement on Chan. I get central midfield too because the bust that Mecha was. Because Sabitzer is he 30, 31? Like he's also older.
Mm-hmm.
Like yeah, he had a great season towards the end. Brandt, I always forget, like he's not old. He's definitely not old, but he's up there. He's like 20, late 20s, 29, 28, 29 maybe. So it'd be nice to see. Obviously, we have some pieces from that could be coming in. Vetchin is one of them, so I'd be interested to talk about him. Not right now. I think we can do that in the summer, but like to see what his role might be for next year. That's a cool shout. But yeah, we need so many. Hopefully, Duranville is a guy who can actually crack on next year, and then I know there's been some talks about Paris Brunner, who I think plays for the U19s. I don't know if that's a guy who can make a jump, but I know there's been negotiations with him as far as contracts go. So maybe if they're paying him what was rumored, maybe that means they're gonna look at him for more first team stuff. I don't know, but yeah, we're just so depleted. It's crazy.
Yeah, thank God for the World Cup money, Champions League money, the sales of countless other stars the past 3 years. Because yeah, like we mentioned plenty of times, this team needs a lot of reinforcements in the summer. My number one priority doesn't change from about a month ago when I mentioned it first. I think it needs to be in Maatsen. Our left back is just, I mean, and the likes of Ben Zabayani, he's been very underwhelming. Tom Rota, of course, is going to be someone that we can hopefully lock down long term, and he can be someone that can develop for the first team going forward. But Maatsen he is that man at left back. I don't see another player that suits our system as well as him. He seems very happy here, so he's got to be my number one. My number two is just a promising number 6 to challenge Emre Can, push him to be the best player he can be, but also just be another option that we can have in midfield that can be that anchor man, a deep line playmaker if we can need it. Then after that's got to be Sancho. Hopefully, just because he helps, and of course he could put up so many numbers like he has in the past. He helps out immensely in build up, and Terzic, of course, has a lot of struggles in that area, but just having Sancho there to relieve some pressure, to play out of pressure, he's going to be vital in that aspect too. Those are my 3 signings that I would go for my priorities, and then see what kind of money we have left. But that kind of segues into one of the last 2 questions here, which is what do you want to see from Borussia Dortmund next season? And there's been, again, a lot of answers here, but I'll go over some of the more overarching themes. First one is just a lot of people here put consistency. Consistency from the team domestically. We need to be putting better results, better performances against the likes of these bottom 6 teams in the Bundesliga, teams around us, of course, also just teams above us too. We need to be better against the likes of Stuttgart. We need to be better against the likes of Leipzig. We have been better against Bayern, but it just again needs to be more consistent. We have some I'll read some other quotes here from people who touch more on consistency and attacking plan, more complex than just punt it long to Adeyemi or Füllkrug. Consistency. Hold on, I have some other here. Competing for the Bundesliga, of course, a title challenge, winning the Bundesliga, consistency and our build-up, win the Bundesliga in all caps.
That one was me. I mean, someone else might have said it too, but and just on that too, like winning the Bundesliga would be amazing. Well, I think a more realistic thing, like I want to win a trophy next year, and I think the most likely, or like I would be very happy with. I know we got close to winning the Champions League, right? But I don't know if we're gonna make another great run like that. I would love it, but consistency is in there. I want to really solid. I want to be one of the strongest teams in the Bundesliga. Of course, I want to win the Bundesliga. I don't think that's super realistic either, but we need to be consistent. We need to be beating those teams, as you mentioned. But if we can make a really good run in Pokal and like win the Pokal, like I would love that. If we show that we're good in the Bundesliga and win the Pokal, like I'd be pretty happy with that. And I think those are pretty low expectations coming off almost winning the Bundesliga the year before and then having a shot at the Champions League final. Like that seems pretty low to me. But I just want to see that takes consistency, right? Like that takes a performance through a whole competition. Yeah, and that's what I want. Maybe it's champ. I feel like I'm selling ourselves so short saying I want to win the Pokal or like even like Europa League if we get knocked out of the Champions League. You know what I mean? Like not that I want that by any means, but I just want us to all that takes consistency. So I guess that's what I'm getting at. What everyone else has been saying.
Right. There's, I mean, a few shouts for deep runs in the Pokal as well. We've been very underwhelming since we won in the 2020-2021 season, or I think was that 21-22, I forget. But either way, just the past few years we've been pretty underwhelming in the Pokal. So yeah, deeper runs there, a more incorporation of the youth prospects from the likes of Brunner, Mukoko, Rota, Vachin. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Terzic, I think, should be using our academy a bit more just because there's so many great talents at his disposal. Better youth development, better tactical plans in our build-up. So again, a lot of overarching themes that we've been mentioning on the show for a while now. So I don't disagree with any of them, really. And then I'm scrolling through. And then lastly, this is not Dortmund specific, but just what do you want to see on our show moving forward? And we had a few here that I wanted to touch on. First, we had a few people talk about live streams. That's a great shout. We have done a few here in the spring. I definitely want to do more in the fall when both of us have the time. But we did do a few already, and they were really fun. So we'll keep you guys posted with those. Oh, someone mentioned better audio quality on my end. That's absolutely my fault.
Did they specifically say on Carver's end?
Well, since I moved, I'm right next to a highway, so I try to mute myself as much as possible. But there are a lot of people who love to rev their engines and just be completely, I don't know, a nuisance whenever they drive by here. So apologies for that. I'm trying to.
We had the benefit of
room.
When we started the show, we recorded in a legit radio studio every week, which was
that too. Yeah,
we started real hot, and now we used to do that in person. So sorry, guys. We just use the internet.
Right. Yeah, more guests. We try to get on as many as we can. We do have some fun guests lined up for the summer here. And then also, yeah, one here that I want to touch on. They said they're a newer fan in the past few years. They're having trouble finding some good info on the history and traditions of BVB. Maybe during the off season, we could do a filler episode explaining some history, traditions, songs, and things to know to be an informed fan. I like that shout. Now, I will say, first and foremost, I don't think that's going to be me personally to be the resource for the history and traditions of Borussia Dortmund, as much as I do love this club and try to be as up-to-date, resourceful, and credible as I can. I'm just an American at the end of the day who admires from afar. As you know, I've only been to Dortmund a few times, and I've also only been invested in the club since like the 13-14 season, at least exclusively. So of course I would be interested in trying to do an episode like that, although I would be more happy to point you in another direction for other people who have more resources for that sort of thing. But yeah, good shout there. I'll try to come up with something here in the summer. Did you have any other thoughts about the other things I mentioned?
No, I get the live streams, and I know a lot of podcasts, like they just do the whole show as a live stream. That is something we've definitely talked about. And just a little behind the scenes, Carver and I don't always record at a consistent time. So the thought of we want it, we've talked about it for sure, but we want that to be a benefit to everyone who could tune into a live stream, and we want it to kind of be at a consistent time, and just our schedules haven't allowed that quite yet. We have been posting as of pretty recently, we've been posting everything on YouTube as a video, so it might not be a live stream in real time, because we do want to incorporate, like, I love the aspect of a live chat and people interacting with the show in real time.
Totally.
Like that's super valuable, and we would love for that to be like, we've talked about our Discord, and that's a way to communicate with us like throughout the week. But I totally get, and I love the live input that you guys, the listeners, could give, and how that can kind of enhance the show. I love that idea. If Carver and I can maybe get a time locked in to where it's a benefit to, because I want everyone to know, like, oh, this night, this time, I can watch the BVB pod. Like that's a great idea. Unfortunately, we haven't really been able to do that. But I don't know if we can figure it out in the next season. Yeah, that's a great shout. Like I said, I'm a fan of it. We do have the video aspect of the podcast on YouTube if you just want to see what we look like, but it's the same as listening.
Yeah. And yeah, with games, and I'm definitely down to do that too. But just with Saturdays, I know Jake is out of town for 50% of Saturdays, and the other half he's just working here in town at the stadium. So yeah, we'll try to make that work because I definitely had a blast whenever I was with Jake from 50 Plus Done Air when we did those live streams there. So
speaking of Carver's audio quality, he just screwed it all up.
I know. That is the end of the survey. I want to thank each and every one of you that participated in it. It's a lot more fun whenever we have more people just sharing their thoughts. I'm always interested to see what other people think about just their season recap and just their general thoughts, going forward and signings and all that. And then just in general, I just want to express my sincere gratitude towards any and every person who's ever given us a listen and engaged with the show. We're almost at 100 episodes. I don't know if you noticed that, Jake, but this is our 97th episode already, and it just still feels surreal to be able to do this and have an audience. I'm truly humbled by the engagement and support of the show, whether it's anyone who's listened to us for 30 seconds or 58 minutes, however long this episode is. But either way, again, I just want to express my gratitude. It's overwhelming how cool it is that people are giving us a spin. So thank you to each and every one of you that has listened and just engaged with the show over the past few years, or however long you've been a fan of the show or just the team in general.
Yeah, it's always really fun doing this podcast, and it's again to see just people listening consistently, and like more people come in and listen. Like if people weren't listening, we wouldn't have made it to almost 100 episodes. It is really cool that we're about to hit that milestone. We'll have to do something special. Maybe that's when we do a live stream, is when for our 100th episode. It's unfortunate. It seems like that might be through this summer because all the season's over. We're not going to do episodes every week like we usually do. We'll have some guests on. We'll do some kind of summer. We'll have some summer preview episodes, obviously, as we get closer to the new season. But if we get some big signing news, if we get some news in between, like we'll come on and do episodes for that. So maybe we might have a summer 100th episode, unless we just like play it real cool and just wait until the kickoff of the season. I don't know, but we'll probably do a few more in between now and then. But yeah, it's awesome to see people keep listening and the numbers keep growing and more people and meeting people from all over. We're constantly getting plugged in with the show. It's awesome.
I love seeing in the Discord lately too, and this isn't like a plug that I anticipated on giving.
Plug it.
It is really cool to see people ask in our chat over the past few months, like, hey, is there a club in whatever city, or is there anyone watching the game at this bar? And people are connecting like, oh yeah, actually we have a fan club here. Oh yeah, we just started this. You could join. And if anything else in the show, forget about me. I'm just glad people are able to connect with other Dortmund fans, because up until the last, handful of years, it's been tough for not just me, of course, but plenty of other people around the country in the United States, also just around the world, to connect with other Dortmund fans. But now, just the brand is just continuously expanding, and it's becoming more accessible. So I'm glad that I can, and just even the smallest way, be able to help connect people and just give whatever information I can, and be however small or big of a resource that you want us to be. So either way, it's just really cool to witness and be a part of.
Yeah, it's awesome. And if you are new, that's kind of the reason for the show. Like I've said it multiple times, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself to the people who've been with us for a long time, but that's what it's about. That's why, because Carver was the only other person I knew who was a Dortmund fan, and then because of him, I met everyone else in St. Louis. There's quite a lot of Dortmund fans here. We're pretty blessed here in St. Louis, but to see and make those connections and just to have people to talk Dortmund with, and it always makes it more fun. And that's why we do this. So it's really cool, and we appreciate it. Before we sign off, though, I just saw this on Instagram, so I will say, talk about the Euros. We could have hit on it a little earlier, but before we sign off, just Dortmund being represented in the Euros, which kick off on Friday with Germany versus Scotland, I believe. Mm-hmm. Nico Schlotterbeck and Nicholas Füllkrug for Germany. Obviously, Danya Malen and Ian Matson, who just got called up for the Netherlands. Sally Özcan, maybe you forgot about him, still a Dortmund player.
Özcan was called up? I did not know that, actually.
For Turkey. I mean, he's pretty consistently
well,
in the Turkish team.
But yeah, I guess it's fair.
Gregor Kobel, obviously. And then Marcel Sabitzer for Austria. So, yeah, I hate this time of year because I just miss watching European domestic football, but Euros are a fun tournament too. So, and we've done USMNT stuff before. I don't know how I'm feeling about it this summer. I don't know if we're gonna do any Copa America USMNT stuff. I don't know.
After the Colombia loss, I don't know if I want to be affiliated with the men's national team.
But and I know that maybe people weren't thinking about that in the survey. But I don't know, I'm curious to see people's interest in maybe summer coverage of if it's the Euros, if it's USMNT. I know our USMNT episodes probably didn't do that well for our German listeners, but I'm just curious of what kind of coverage you guys might be interested in besides the normal transfers, like just other stuff, or maybe like Discord. You can here's my plug. You can let us know in our Discord, or with the Spotify Q&A. If you want to reply, if you listen on Spotify, you can let us know there. But I think Discord's the best way, and maybe that's where we're just going to talk about all the football happening in Europe and in North America in our Discord. So you can join our Discord with the link in the description of this episode. Plugged. I did it.
Love that. Thank you, guys. This has been, I mean, as heartbreaking as it was for another end, it's been a very fun year engaging with you all. We'll be back here in the next few weeks, take a few weeks off. Hopefully everyone can find some peace, happiness, recuperate, have just a small hint of the holidays and vacations that you're seeing from these multi-millionaire athletes that you're seeing online. But yeah, just hopefully you can have some fun this summer, and we'll be back soon.
Yep. Appreciate you guys. See you later.